a legendary group with us today, folks. Legends of legends, Decoders of Truth. Billy Carson, Matthew LaCroix, Jay Campbell. And we've done some great shows in the past. I think it's been way too long, so I'm glad we have an opportunity to do this again. Y'all look amazing. And I don't know what you're doing, but it's working. Like, how have you been in this new world that we're living in? It's pretty wild. Are you in the metaverse yet?
Oh, I'm working on the metaverse now. I'm actually going to build the Forbidden College in the metaverse, and which is going to be great. And I've got my own cryptocurrency, which actually is already out. I just haven't fully announced it completely to the world yet. I guess maybe some people will find out now. The Forbidden Coin, and it's in its final stages of being released to a couple of platforms. And I'll be taking my own cryptocurrency on my own website, and I'm building a web directory of businesses that can take the crypto as well. So just trying to, continue to create new ecosystems.
Brilliant. Yeah. Take advantage of that. Let's get NFTs of all of us out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We deserve to have the NFTs out there for real.
An NFT of Billy Carson and Matt. Jay, we could get one of Gerald Clark. All proceeds go to his wife.
Oh, man. Oh, that'd be so great.
Give it to Krista. Yeah,
that would be fantastic.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it would.
So I just want to say it's really great to see y'all, and I'm so happy to hear about your new ecosystem. That's awesome. I've actually got some ideas in the works right now. The coins and the digital real estate and the NFTs. It's hot, it's super hot. So take advantage of that opportunity and find something that'll connect, that'll make it real. Make it a little bit different, unique. And I'm sure you are.
Yeah.
Matt, what are you up to?
Hey guys,
now in Denver. No, you're north of Denver.
No, I'm near Boulder, but yeah.
Okay.
I just want to say, to start out though, it's an honor to be here with you gentlemen. And if you remember, almost about a year ago, we did this as well. And it was a very, very successful show. I don't think Rex was involved on that one though, but I'm glad that Rex is here. I think that's going to make this even a better show than before. So I'm looking forward to this discussion, guys. We're going to have some deep dives. We're going to go into updates. We're going to have a roundtable debate, something that seems to be largely lost in our society today, debating a topic and not allowing, anger and different kinds of emotions to get involved in it. So that's going to be a nice thing to go into. But other than that, I'm good, guys. I've been creating some pretty kick-ass content at Gaia lately. Of course, anyone who knows TV production stuff, everything has a huge delay. So that's why you haven't seen anything yet. But Billy Carson and I have got a chance to work on some stuff on Gaia together, and that's been pretty cool. So look forward to that coming early 2022.
Nice,
awesome, Matt.
Nice.
Right on, man.
Excellent.
Now, what have you been doing, Jay?
A lot of stuff too, man. I think first off, it's an honor to be with all of you guys. Of course, myself saying that to you. Rex and I just did an amazing show about I think it was about 5 weeks ago. And then the opposing forces made Rex take it down, and then he edited it and relaunched it. It was actually better, even I think after it happened. But
I love it.
I'm also in the creation stream of the world. I launched a company in 2019 at the very end. It's 2 years. Black Friday is when we launched it, and it's selling what I call golden age cosmetic peptides or cosmeceutical peptides for the hair and the skin. And we're breaking through into the world now. Rex has actually been using them, and I think that 2022 is going to be a massive year for us. But also creating courses on how to use peptides, on how to optimize your health in a obviously highly decimated world and society. And those are all coming. So again, I'm just honored to be here with you guys. I definitely, thankfully, have found time to research and to continue my pursuit of understanding arcane and esoteric research. And I truly believe, guys, and I would actually say it's more of a knowing, that 2022 is going to be the year that all of this breaks out into the open. There are so many amazing researchers that are coming out with books and have come out with books in just the last year and a half. Paul Wallace, we all know Paul Wallace. This guy, Neil Haig, just wrote this book, Orion's Door, which I desperately attempted to get through before this podcast because it's so unbelievable. But again, all of us are blessed to be here, to be able to put this information into the universe, to collectively crowdsource this so that more and more researchers can obviously use our thinkings and our awareness go down better and bigger paths. So again, I'm honored to be here with you guys.
Beautiful.
Right on. Yeah, right on. And I just want to say a couple things I've been working on. So 2 graphic novels right now. The first one's complete. We are almost completed with the artwork, and we've got a second one in the works. So I think we're on chapter 9. Then we're also working on an ecosystem. We're going to do some NFTs, and we have talked about coins, but we just have to find the right coder and the right coin and the reason to put it together. On top of that, there's a couple of TV programs that I'm working on right now. Really excited. I've been going around the Four Corners region substantially uncovering petroglyphs. I just got back from a wonderful ceremony. Great friend that's a Zuni elder. And I think I was probably the only, anyway, well, we'll talk about that later, but super excited to be out there and made some great connections with Navajo, Hopi tribes and peoples, wonderful people. And I think that it connects to Egypt and ancient Sumer and Babylon and Greece and Rome. So cool. So let's talk about it.
Nice. This is great stuff, man. I'm looking forward to this.
Right on. Now, Matt, you had put something together of a Anunnaki, like the Anunnaki influence of humanity, as well as the golden age. And you want to talk about like the reptilian mindset and the mammalian mindset, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to be just presenting just a little bit of data to get us started, to get things moving here. And then one of those things will be, who are these creators of civilization here, these influences of where our story came from, of our timeline, all this stuff. And then one of the things that's going to come out of that will be discussions that go into a debate about really discussing, well, when you look into ancient Sumer, Babylon, the Assyrian Empire, all the way through the Persian empires, and really civilizations around the world, you find these common influencers of creating these civilizations based on these divine rules and laws that get handed down from above every time. That's this commonality that's shared around the world, and that those groups and the symbols that are shown for them is really consistent around the world, of these similar influences that created civilizations from the Americas, like the Maya. Actually, we could even start by like talking about just adding in like the Anasazi of the Southwest, the Puebla people, right into the Hopi. There's some incredible stories in there that really may go beyond this Ice Age traverse narrative that we're taught about, migrations from Asia. The Hopi don't say that at all, and neither do a lot of the other cultures. And then we can, of course, move down into these influencers of the Mayan realms and the Aztec realms and the areas of the pre-Inca and all those groups of, Tiwanaku and Pumapunku in Bolivia around Lake Titicaca, and of course around the world, throughout the Mediterranean regions, Turkey, right down through Baalbek, Lebanon, and Petra, Jordan. And all through these regions, we really find these very, very similar influences. It seems that they're the same type of group that is moving around, and some have different influences and some have some competing influences, but it is the same group. And we could probably, as a consensus of this discussion right now, this roundtable, is that group is really best known as either the Yanuna or Anunnaki to the Sumerians, which is simply just an umbrella term for these higher up hierarchy beings that came from above and then created all these civilizations around the world. And so I just want to get us started on that conversation, because what we're going to be going into at some point as we go here, after I just present a little bit of information, is we can discuss that, but also we're going to get into a debate that I feel like is long, long overdue. A debate that Jay Campbell's laughing over there because this debate is like the heart of the discussions online, back and forth. And that debate is, are the Anunnaki reptilian or are they humanoids? And that's going to be, as we get to that point, we'll get there, Jay. We're not there yet.
The answer is tricky.
We're going to get to that conversation, and let's just say Jay and I and the rest of the group, I don't know the positions that Rex and Billy are going to take, but we're going to have a lively debate, and then we're going to present our data, and we're going to see, which side the evidence points towards. But so having said that, I want to start the narrative off by understanding that none of this information and what we're talking about, from at least my side, is based on any Zecharia Sitchin information. First off, I want everyone who does not know about this book to go look it up, despite the cover being a little bit strange in terms of what the content is. this book is very important, and I highly encourage people to check it out. This is what's going to get us started with our debate. So George Smith was the first person in history to translate Sumerian, Akkadian cuneiform tablets in over 1,000 years. So in 1849, a huge catch of cuneiform tablets was found in Mesopotamia outside Mosul in a place called Nineveh, and it was called the Ashur-banipal Library. And that was found by Henry Austin Layard, who was working later with George Smith. So George Smith traveled to the Middle East in the late 1800s and was part of those excavations. And they excavated enormous amounts of these ancient cuneiform tablets where you etch in symbols that is not actually based on an alphabet. Sumerian Akkadian is actually based on, it's a language isolate that's based on words. So if you want, which I'm learning to do right now, is actually learn how to read Sumerian, you find out that you can't just learn an alphabet and then understand what the rest of it is. Each character has its own value. So you have to literally learn thousands and thousands of characters to be able to understand this dead language. But essentially what it comes down to is that George Smith was the first person and Syriologist expert to actually understand how to read that language, and nobody knew how to do it. And the first tablets that were translated were the Epic of Gilgamesh. So to make a long story short, just to give that introduction of who George Smith is, he, in my mind, is the father of cuneiform. Everyone else who learned how to read and decipher cuneiform came after him. Stephanie Dalley, Samuel Kramer, and a host of other individuals. This is where it started. He was the one who figured it all out. And that's what this discussion is all about, because he provided some very, very specific information at the end of the book as a conclusion that I want to create a topic to discuss here before we get into the debate, Jay. And that is this concept of what role did these creator gods have on our history? And and I don't mean just even mean human history. How about Earth history? And this is what is so fascinating, guys. I want to read this quote here, just these pieces, and we can discuss it. But essentially, the strange thing about the Anunnaki is they seem to be obsessed with timelines. They talk about it all the time. Billy Carson and I have done shows where they call themselves the Ordainers of Destinies, and how they ordain the destinies of all heroes and all major influences in the human story. So there's already that piece of information we find from a whole number of different tablets. So George Smith has read and deciphered more cuneiform tablets than anyone else in history, hundreds and hundreds of them. And he presented a conclusion at the end of the book, which is what I want this debate to be, this discussion to be about. Is he says, and this is phenomenal because he is the top academic expert in this area. And he concluded his thoughts on these influencers, these Anunnaki influencers of history. And he said this, and I quote, at the end of the conclusion of his book of the Chaldean account of Genesis, he says, most of the other stories, so far as I can judge, are fixed on the great period before the flood, these pre-Diluvian civilizations, when celestial visitors came backwards and forwards to the earth. And then they talk about how the inhabitants of the world became divided by good and bad. And he goes into these accounts about how Berosus, an ancient Babylonian priest, supported these enormous long reigns of these early kings we find from the Sumerian king list and the Uruk list of kings and sages as ruling for thousands of years, and how these influences of those genetic bloodlines seem to come back to these celestial visitors. And those words that I just want to bring up again is coming backwards and forwards to the earth. Now, how I see that, guys, and I would love your opinions to get into this, but it sounds like, if based on the Enuma Elish, Billy, and how something about how early human history coming here and affecting the solar system and something about how Earth was completely in chaos through Tiamat, and they had to conquer and maybe terraform the earth or whatever it is. Yeah. But the point is, so the Anunnaki seem like this group they're just time travelers. They're coming to the earth at a certain time because they have a certain reason, and they're coming later again to create civilizations. And so I want to get your opinion, guys, and maybe we can start with Billy. like, does that jive with all the things you've studied on these creator gods and their influences?
It's pretty interesting that you brought this up this way, because one of the things I've been trying to have a hypothesis on is, have some of these Anunnaki been able to travel back and forth through time? And when they called themselves the Ordainers of Destiny, I was able to dig a little bit deeper, and I realized that they were talking about seeing the future with some type of maybe potential device, and seeing the superposition of all the potentials that could occur, and then seeing the actual one future timeline that they wanted to collapse into their reality. And then they would go about putting forth the conscious effort and energy and making all the right decisions to collapse that reality. It's like collapsing a wave function in physics, right? And so they would collapse this reality into their tunnel. And by that method, they were the ordainer of destinies, not only others, but even their own. And the fact that only the elite of the elite had access to these portals, these stargates, that they would walk from Earth to their home planet and back into other places. I'm wondering now, after studying a little bit more of the physics of these stable wormholes, or potential theories, the theoretical physics of them, can you walk backwards and forward also even in time? So it's something that we really can't rule out. The fact that some of them may have had the capability of moving back and forth in time. And could some of these ancient wars be temporal wars?
Right.
It's something that we have to now, I think, add to the thing and consider, and just really, meditate on it for a little while, and look at some of the other statements that we've maybe seen before, but hadn't really grasped the full meaning of them, because it's very possible that some of them had the capability of moving around in time.
Well said. Beautifully stated. Yeah. So I would
comment on that, Jay.
Yeah, for sure. So, first off, I just want to say Matt thinks he's going to be debating me, but he's actually not going to be debating me, because we actually agree. But when we get to that place, I will explain like our differences in opinion, which I really don't think are differences, because this place is such a confused division, or I should say, like Billy just said, temporal. But I mean, essentially the third dimension is a dimension of vibration. And we are all just caught up in the waveform, as you just said. And there are beings that can manipulate the waveform, and we'll talk about that. But to your point, what you were just saying is, I truly do know from the works of, wow, her mind just I just lost my train of thought. But from the works of the lady that does all the regression hypnosis, what is her name? My God, I can't even think of. I literally just had a total brain fart. Sorry, guys. I've been reading so much today, but
that's all right.
I can't believe I can't think of her. But
is her first name Mary?
No. This is the famous author who's written all the books. I can't think of her name. Dolores Cannon. Jesus.
Dolores Cannon. Okay.
Sorry. Oh. She has talked about what you're talking about, Billy.
Yeah.
That these beings, whoever they are, whether they are the Anunnaki, or they are somebody else, they are the builder race, whatever you want to call them, they do hijack timelines, and they are going back and forth in the period of humanity to adjust us. Think of, what was it, the Adjustment Bureau. But like in reality, they are going back and forth to perfect us so that at some point we do reach a quote unquote new earth or a golden age. And even all of the lore of ufology, where it goes into the abductions and all of that stuff. And again, people have memory implants, and people talk about being moved out through physical homes and cars into ships or whatever, that all of that is a temporal, again, creation where people are being manipulated through the waveform reality to another waveform reality outside of the third dimension. And they're shaping people, again, if it's human beings, if it's sapiens, whatever, to evolve us, I would say vibrationally, and of course, genetically, to eventually exist in this higher state of a being. Let's put it vibration, let's put it awareness, or whatever. But I think that's literally what is happening. And of course, as all of this is happening, we are in a war between the light and the dark, the two inverse polarities of the nature of the third dimension, which is, again, white, black, dark, light, good, evil. It's just this constant, shift of back and forth of like, who serves the left-hand path, which is what I would call the negative parasitic energies, versus who serves the right-hand path, which is the light and love and peace and clarity and all that stuff. So that's what's happening, again, in my opinion. But we are being evolved, and it is a very methodical, very meticulous, very conscious process that has been ongoing for who knows how many years.
Yeah. Interesting. Really interesting. Yeah. That sounds pretty good. Dolores Cannon, is that the lady that said something about the family of light? Is that her thing? The family of light?
Yeah. So she's probably gotten like 11 books, and most of the stuff that she did was on regression hypnosis. And she saw all these people, past and future, who were coming into the different timelines as energy beings, as humanoid beings. And so she, it's very positive. She's a very positive person. She doesn't really talk a lot about darkness. In fact, she says that nothing is darkness. It's just an intention that we are looking at based on our vibration when stuff happens. Like even the quote unquote dark side aliens aren't really dark side aliens, because they're actually involved in, again, manipulating us to a higher state of awareness / consciousness.
Okay, interesting. I got to check out all her stuff now.
Fascinating. And I wanted to jump in on what you were saying, Matthew, because when you first brought up the going back and reverse, how did you
backwards and forwards into Earth history?
Okay, so when you said that, the first thing that I thought of was time travel. However, it could be something more realistic, like coming from a different horizon, or a different part of the planet. And I'm just throwing this out there because the astrotheology stuff that I've found out with the cuneiform tablets, like the Epic of Gilgamesh as an example, is it really Gilgamesh out there trying to reach immortality, or is it a description of the hero's journey of people that reach certain levels of enlightenment and also different zodiac signs? Because here's a quick example. Babylon, the mythology most associated with Aquarius, is the epic story of Gilgamesh. And Kidu, his beloved companion, dies young and unexpectedly. Devastated and unwilling to accept what fate has dealt him, Gilgamesh sets out on a quest to procure the herb of immortality, which he would use to restore his companion to life. The mother goddess, infuriated that a mortal would interfere with the natural order of things, sends a bull, which is Taurus, and a pride of lions, which is Leo, to prevent Gilgamesh from reaching his goal. However, Gilgamesh perseveres. His harshest test comes at the gates of the underworld, where he outwits and defeats the Scorpion warriors who guard the entrance. Well, the Scorpion warriors is Scorpio. So if you take the Zodiac, you've got Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and then Aquarius. And Aquarius is the age of man. Aquarius is the age of freedom and innovation and abundance and really reaching your highest self. It's the age of man. It's the age of whoa, man. So that to me is describing the zodiac will. Now, with that in mind, it also could mean that these people and these beings are practicing certain rituals and certain rites and certain spells, and they act particular ways, and they have a foundation of the economy and industries and the aristocratic bloodline. It's all connected to the zodiac will. And then I also wanted to show this, which is even cooler, because you brought up I just did a paper on this, the early king list, the early kings, which is actually 432,000 years of kingship. And there's 10 kings, and these kings are described by Berosus, the high priest of Bel-Marduk.
Yes.
And he's brilliant. This is in ancient Greece.
Yeah.
Marduk, literally the Marduk.
That's crazy.
El Marduk. So he's the priest for Marduk. And with that in mind, look at the timelines of these rules. Each Sar is 3,600 years. Each Sar is 3,600 years. So these people are ruling for 36,000 years. This guy rules for almost 70,000 years. And is that really how long these people ruled? Or when you look at the number 432 hertz is the frequency that cathedrals are tuned to. 432 hertz is a higher frequency to reach, higher levels of enlightenment. That's
the angelic frequency, 432.
Yeah, right. So could this also be encoding a multitude of information?
It is.
And also, could the SARS be referencing, maybe they return every 3,600 years and they're checking on their foundation. They're checking on their peoples. They're like, okay, these guys are really messing up. They're doing, we're going to give you another SAR. We'll check back on you on our next round. But they came from the water, by the way. This being comes from the water. He doesn't come from space. And he's got this fish suit on. and people are acting barbaric and crazy. And he's like, hey, look, you need to listen. So I am just questioning now, are these newer stories from older stories, were these actually peoples, or was it signs that took place in the heavens? So people that knew astronomy would say, I am Bel Marduk, I am Inanna, I am, well, probably be a feminine that would say, I am Inanna, because, but you get my point. Do you see what I'm saying? So I want to get your thoughts on that. Okay. And it's cool. It's fascinating.
Can I jump in on that, guys? Okay. So a couple of things there, Rex. Yes, you have pointed out there are celestial connections to the different zodiac constellations. And now here's where we have to be careful, though, because those connections exist and we find these archetypal information for that hero's journey does not mean that the whole story should not be taken literally at all. And let me give you some proof for why that we want to be careful with that. If you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, yes, you find out he was seeking immortality, but he was also seeking immortality for himself as well. And one of the things he goes down, if you go past those celestial connections you had with the Zodiacs, you find that at one point in the story, there are very specific examples to real things. You find out he's a tyrant king of the city of Uruk. Okay, so if he's not real, like if it's just a parable or a story to teach the hero's journey, we find these particular areas within it that point us out that, well, look, no, there are aspects of the story that are really genuine from an actual king that goes on an actual journey. Now let's expand on that. So he's a tyrant king from the city of Uruk, okay, which we know is in Mesopotamia, near a lot of these other ancient cities. But we find out some really interesting information from the Epic of Gilgamesh. We find out that he was specifically a post-Diluvian king, okay? That's very important to understand. He talks about how when he goes to seek the seekers of immortality, he goes to the ocean at the end of the world, which if you look into what that is, it's the underworld. Okay, he goes to find a specific individual. Okay, and that individual he's going to find is the whole basis for how we know that the story has literal aspects of it. He goes to find an individual named Untandapishtim. Okay, and if you go and you look into who that individual is, it's the same individual who's known as Zayasudra, who is the author of Atrahasis, the Epic of Atrahasis tablets. If you look up who that is, you find out that he was the last king of Shuruppak before it was destroyed. And Shuruppak was the last city that existed in the pre-Diluvian world. If you find the Sumerian king list, Uruk list of kings and sages, a whole number of them, you find out that there was an ancient city called Shuruppak before a great catastrophe came through and wiped everything out. The old kingdom, the old world, okay? And he talks about how he's going to find that individual, okay? Because that individual was the only individual since then, a mortal human who was able to obtain immortality. This is why Gilgamesh goes to seek him. And you find out that in a tablet called the Death of Billigames, and Billigames was another name for Gilgamesh, you find out that this individual, if you look into the story of how he survived this catastrophe with his family, he was given immortality by the gods, but they specifically stated, the Anunnaki gods, because he was a royal bloodline of their bloodlines who they already could live for thousands of years because these beings that created them are literally immortal. And that's where that you get this immortality aspect into these bloodlines. So you find out that Gilgamesh goes to seek this king, okay, named Untandapishtim in the underworld, and he finds him. And you have that famous scene where he goes to the boatman who takes him across the ocean. You know, that famous scene they show in movies all the time. That's the scene of the underworld traversing of these realms.
Sauron, yeah. Yeah,
and he finds Untandapishtim. Okay, this Noah figure, this Atrahasis figure, and he has a whole conversation with him. And he asks him, he's like, you're the last mortal human to ever obtain immortality. I want to know the secrets. And so Untandapishtim tells him this great story. He tells him how the city that he used to live in, Shuruppak, was an ancient city, so old, and I've mentioned this many times, but it's fascinating, that the gods were once in it. He says that they were once in it. And then when the deluge came through and destroyed everything, they departed from this physical reality, is what he states. Now, what's really interesting about it is that Atrahasis Untenapishtim basically tells Gilgamesh that you can obtain immortality if you can do these certain things like stay awake for 7 days without sleeping, or going down the bottom of the ocean to get some special plant that grows at the bottom, and all these things. Gilgamesh basically fails each one of these tests, and this is the ending I want to give here, is that he goes back to Uruk empty-handed and disappointed. And he talks about how he gives the diameters and the specific ratios of certain castles and temples he wants to like build and all these things. But the whole point of this, Rex, the point I'm trying to make is, yes, there are definite hero's journey parable stories in here. There are metaphors. There are things that connect to the zodiacs. With the Taurus, the bull was, of course, not a real bull. It's definitely a constellation. But then you have all these literal aspects. So it really begs the question of, at what point do you understand what those non-literal aspects were? How does that incorporated fit into the story?
Well, so, and you've heard the saying, as above, so below.
Of course.
And the aristocratic bloodline, especially many of these higher ruling orders, they would follow the stars and the constellations to a T. I mean, it was very important to them. This is what I wanted to show you. Utnapishtim. So in the Epic of Gilgamesh, you're right, Utnapishtim is immortal. Utnapishtim is recognized also as Aquarius. So when Gilgamesh is trying to find Utnapishtim, he's trying to reach the age of Aquarius. Also, listen to this. Utnapishtim, once a mortal himself, was tested for faith by the gods. He was told by the voices of the gods to build a boat as the world was doomed to be deluged. This is recognizable in modern religious mythology as Noah in the book of Genesis. As a reward for his faith and actions, Utnapishtim was granted eternal life and given charge of the herb of immortality. So it could be both. I'm not saying that isn't like that didn't physically happen here, but I can also say for sure that this is connected to the zodiac clock, because we know what the Taurus is. We know what the Aries is, the age of Lamb. Pisces is the age of Jesus, Jesus, the New Testament. Now we're moving into the age of Aquarius. But when you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, it goes from Taurus. It goes from Taurus. Then it skips to, goes to Leo. Then it skips to, goes to Scorpio. Then it skips to and goes to Aquarius. So it's going bang, 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 bang. You got the cosmic clock. And once again, that you can prove. You can prove that. And the other stories, there's just so many stories about the same journey with different names. I'm questioning whether or not. Well, here's another thing that could have happened, right? You've got people that are passing on this information from generation to generation to generation to generation to generation. So they could take something that actually happened, take an actual king that claims to be immortal or claims to be from the gods, and then write a story to match what he wants. Does that make sense? I think we're all right in a way.
I think it's a combination of both, to be honest with you. I think that you guys are both right, because just like in poetry, you have something called a double entendre. And in a double entendre, you can actually create a verse that has dual meanings, or that covers the same thing, but in two different ways. And so if you look at the Epic of Gilgamesh, you can see where it has this hero's journey type of a feeling, and these metaphors at the same time telling a literal story. It's a combination, I believe, of both. And a lot of the things that I've now read and studied from the ancient past seem to have these double meanings, or these extra undertones that give you this extra esoteric wisdom or knowledge that you're supposed to seek and dig deeper into. So I believe it's a combination of both.
Billy, by the way, that's exactly what Pierre Sabak says in his books, and he calls it the dialectic. It's an underwoven etymologic, symbolic understanding that people see both sides if you have the awareness, right? So like if you're in the priest class and there's all these different names, the Brotherhood of the Snake and the Serpent Kings and all these different things. But if you're in this ordained initiatic, high level initiate, whatever you want to call them, secret society classes, they do see that. So there is that is inserted into the root origin of really all languages on planet Earth. So there really is two sides of the same coin, so to speak, and that there's a story and then there's an archetypal journey that Rex is talking about. But, obviously Matt is saying that there is truth in the literal, but I'm going to shift this for a second because I want to go back to that picture that Rex you just showed. Can you put that back up there with the Anunnaki god? Because I know we're going to get into this debate. We don't even have to go there yet, Matt, but I want to just turn everything upside down and say
that's Gilgamesh, by the way, on the right there.
Right. So, that's actually Gilgamesh right there. Okay.
It's interesting because he has a lion that he's holding, and the lion has a mane, which can only be a mature lion, and you can see how big it is. And I think that was actually symbolic. He's one of these giant bloodline gods.
Right. He's a hybrid.
You know what else it could represent too, Matt? And that's right. You're right. You're right. Let's do the double take here. It also represents Leo, the constellation of Aquarius over.
Why
Leo.
couldn't it be both?
Which would be?
I just said you were right, so I said so we're both right. Hello.
Wouldn't that also mean though that is who he's repping? That constellation, that his class of people are from that constellation. I mean, there's a very, very strong possibility. But anyway, what I wanted to turn this is from a standpoint of this dimension is a dimension that has time. Mm-hmm. Outside of this dimension, from what we understand from quantum physics, there is no time. We are measuring things from linear points of application. So outside of this awareness, we're talking about divine Anunnaki, plasmatic beings that, let's think of it like this so people can understand this. If you saw the movie Prometheus, remember the giant whitish humanoid beings that literally looked like they were plasmatic, but they were taking some sort of physical form in this dimension. That is my opinion of what the Anunnaki are. And they could obviously be interdimensional. They could be masters of the waveform. They could literally not be physical, but because they have such power, they're divine gods or whatever, they can take on physical appearance. If we believe in the ancient, all the giant stone edifices and monuments, Göbekli Tepe, obviously Machu Picchu, all these other places where these giant, sexy Huaman in Peru, where I've been, something big built these things. Yes, they use technology and harmonic frequency and everything to rise these things and to have the precise cutting and of the stone and all that stuff. But again, it stands to reason that there were also very large beings that were involved in this. So all I'm saying is, and we can take it from here now, is that I do believe that there is a reptilian presence on Earth. I do not know how to define it. It could be fourth dimensional or second dimensional, or again, outside of our physical construct. But I do believe that human beings were created by humanoid divine beings to, again, you guys have already talked about the hero's journey, to figure out and move our vibration from the awareness that we get through service to creation, through serving humanity or all of creation at our highest and best capacity, through love, through peace, through clarity, through compassion, kindness, and all that creativity. Mm-hmm. And this is just the path that we're on. And at some point, the reptilian, and we don't even have to call them reptilian, we can call them negative parasitic left-hand path energies, came into this reality and have played their role from the left-hand side, from the negative side, from the suppression of consciousness, from keeping people in victimhood, vibrational energy. And so it's just been this back and forth Star Wars type, Spielberg, Lucas type war of the Sith versus the Jedi. Mm-hmm. And the Jedi represent, again, the light beings, and the Sith represent the dark sided beings. And it's just now this giant, literally transhumanistic amalgamation that where we find ourselves today, right? Like I just did a podcast yesterday with one of the leading AI people on the planet. And he was just talking in scientific terms that this is where we're going. And he's not debating it. He doesn't have an opinion. He's like one of the leading minds on the planet. And I think you guys can see it, that's where a lot of people are now pushing their consciousness into this transhumanist, cyborg, metaverse, whatever you want to call it, versus what I call empowered, divine, sovereign, and free. And the choice will be, where do you place your consciousness? Because at the end of the day, guys, all we are is consciousness. We're not these physical bodies. We are literally vibrating particles, standing waves of consciousness or energy. We are plasmatic fire. And so that's what we are. We're not Billy, Jay, Matt, Rex. We are literally consciousness itself. So to me, that's where we really want to take this direction of this podcast. We can talk about the reps, we can talk about who the Anunnaki were, but how are we going to evolve our consciousness so that this place does become the golden age?
Well, check this out. And I just wanted to say, we got about 50 people in the live chat on the website right now, leakproject.com, that are making comments. And I want to thank you all for commenting. Somebody said, and this was so cool, this is about what Matt and I were talking about. And Lars says, if a rapper can write a quadruple entendre, imagine what a demigod can write.
Right.
Well,
1500 IQ Anunnaki.
Touche.
For real.
Touche
That's
that,
real.
man.
Yeah.
I like that. That was powerful.
Yeah. I think I really like what Jay is talking about, because we really have to understand that this as above, so below is, it permeates everything in the entire multiverse and the multidimensional verse. And if you look at what the human brain can do in this dimension, and then step it up to the highest level in terms of seeing what's on the grand scale, well, let's look at the brain. The brain is encased in darkness. And the brain itself doesn't know what's going on out here. It has no clue. But the brain has friends. It has sight, it has ears, it has smell, it has taste, it has touch, it has the senses, and even has more, but we're relegated really to 5 until we really transcend. But those friends go out. It says, hey, to the friends, go out in there and collect information for me. What's going on out there? Those friends go out and collect data, digital bits of information, but the friends themselves cannot really truly understand what they're collecting. They're just collecting information. They bring that information back to the brain. The brain then sorts it all out and projects a hologram, and we navigate through this matrix, this light matrix, based off of that data that's been collected by the sensory perception of these waveforms that collapse themselves into digital information and then project the hologram so we can maneuver through the matrix. Now, if you take it on the larger scale, now consciousness is one mass consciousness out there that has now separated itself into Googles of entities. And I mean everything from the microphone, because it's made of atoms, to these avatar bodies, to the paintings in our rooms and everything else, rocks, the blades of grass. And the purpose of this is for consciousness to send out its friends and to collect data and information. I believe that every single thing that vibrates transmits information back to source. And that source is subjectively understanding and gaining more wisdom and knowledge itself on the multiverse as a whole, as everything continues to expand and grow. And maybe to even understand, what is it like to be a blade of grass in the third dimension? What is it like to be, Billy and Jay and Matt and Rex in the third dimension, even though we're all one, but we're slightly different tuned frequencies of the one. And so I think if we look at it that way, we see that there's this learning process, this learning program that's going on, trying to figure everything out, and ultimately trying to usher everything back to this golden age, this cycle. And the real question is, how do we sustain the golden age? Because nowhere have I read that says you have to collapse. We have collapsed. We keep going through this cycle, this yuga cycle, but nowhere is it written that says we have to go through a cycle. At some point, is it possible that mankind and maybe even the universal consciousness of sentient beings, do we get to a place where we can sustain a golden age? That's the real question, I think.
Billy, that's beautifully what you just said, man. And I don't want to hijack you, man. I want you to go, but I from the words and teachings of Dr. David Hawkins, it will happen when enough of us get to this 250, again, quantifying the map, this 250 of neutrality, and then right into the 300 level of willingness and optimism, because that's when the matrix shuts out. Because the truth is that the matrix is sustained on negative energy, on people having differences of opinion, on fighting and debating, as Matt said on the beginning of the show. I mean, very few people in our community can even have a conversation without, "No, you're wrong." I mean, all of that polarity is what sustains and feeds the negative energy forces. And we can call them archons, we can call them reptiles, we can call them a million different things, right? But at the end of the day, it's literally just—
What's your problem with reptiles, man?
It's the opposite. I'm saying things so we don't get taken off on YouTube. I'm using codes. No, but it's sustaining the energy and frequency that left-hand path, that parasitic negative energy needs
Right.
to stay here in this construct. And we all agree this is a holographic universe, which again makes it a simulated reality, but that's the gift, because each of us as individuals can create that reality, and we can create our heaven on earth through the words that we think, for the actions that we take, and obviously through the thoughts that we focusly think. I mean, those three things give us the reality that we have. So, I mean, we could take this, much deeper and talk about the negative factions that are here and have been here throughout history. But I think for all four of us, especially where we're at now, it's more about solutions. And what are we going to give to the people, the fine, amazing people that watch this show? And there's going to be a lot of people that watch this podcast. What can we give them right now in what is seemingly a dystopian reality, guys? I mean, what about Australia right now? Like, look what's happening in Canada. Yes, we have to create our heaven on earth, and we still have that ability right now. And we all four know that we're going into the golden age / the new earth. But I want to take this time right now to say, before the show is over, I want all of us to talk about things that we can do to help the people that are definitely disadvantaged, that are not in the United States, that don't still have and enjoy the freedoms that we enjoy.
Right. That's a really good point. There's, and what you've said is so true, because I've myself switched into solutions providing mode, which is, why I've got the TV network and the music and everything. I'm just trying to, whatever I'm used to complain about, I go, well, no complain anymore. Let's just create your own, make the, provide the solution. And I think for a lot of people, even in other countries, they see this gradual progression where things look like they're getting a little bit better, then all of a sudden it collapses again, and it's up and down like a stock ticker. And what they have to understand is that right now, humanity as a whole is like a baby trying to crawl. And we're now just trying to learn how to crawl. And then even when a baby learns how to crawl, it falls back flat on its stomach a few times until it can figure out the strength in its leg and the bounce between the two arms and the legs. And eventually it starts to crawl up on the edge of a couch. So it looks like it's getting ready to rise. We're rising now. We're doing good. And then all of a sudden it takes a step and it collapses instantaneously. It hits its head hard and starts crying and screaming. And so we're in this process where humanity really is this child collectively, and we're trying to learn how to crawl eventually to get up and take a few steps. But even when a baby starts to get a couple of steps, eventually it will fall again, and then it will stand up and fall again until it learns how to control the fall, because walking is nothing more than a controlled fall. That's exactly what scientists define walking as, a controlled fall. And until we master the ability to have a controlled fall, we won't reach that age. But what it takes is, though, once we see a fall happen, once we see a collapse happen here, there, we can't get so down on ourselves in the world that we want to give up. We have to realize that it's part of the process.
Beautiful.
Yeah, can I add on that, guys? I want to bring a few little pointers in there. So I love what you and Jay just said. Absolutely. The one thing, or a couple things that I want to bring up. One is that on the surface, it seems that our civilization, with how broken we become and so focused on things like empty entertainment and the material world, and we have so much disrespect for our planet, and we have lost almost entirely a connection we once had to the cosmos, and understanding this much deeper connection that we play with that. And on the surface, it seems that we, compared to all the other ancient cultures that have come before us, we almost don't deserve to go on to the next stage, it seems, on the surface. However, really what's interesting about this whole timeline story, this whole storybook movie, that it really was like the human story, it's like a great play. And I see it as something much more complicated and much more designed and protected than a lot of others may think. I know it seems easy to have the idea of like, oh, on Earth, we're just these sentient beings that happen to get here through luck and various other means, and an asteroid or whatever could just come by and wipe us all out, and it really wouldn't matter, right? Like the rest of the multiverse, the universe would go on and it wouldn't matter. But I would like to point out that I don't think that's true at all. And I think it's much more complex than that. In fact, I think, and this is going to be my interpretation of every ancient text that I've read in the world, and the cultures and the traditions of those cultures, is that what happens to this story may literally define the entire path of the multiverse. Now, that's a bold thing to say. It means that humans are an essential part of this entire story in the cosmos, right? Oh, well, how can that be, right? There's trillions of Earth-like planets throughout the vastness of this multiverse. Why is this so important here? Well, this is where it gets very interesting, because according to the Maya and the Hopi, we're entering either the fourth or the fifth stage of this current these different epics that have come and gone, with civilization rising up and being destroyed and having to fall back again and restart itself. Now, every time subsequently, since knowledge was handed down, like you had an image up before of the Code of Hammurabi, that's what that was, that stone tablet. Those are all based on these earlier time periods in history where we were given all this information and these blueprints for how to create civilization. But then over time, we think we're so smart now, but I think that we have only a fraction of the knowledge that we used to have pre-flood, pre-12,000 years ago, when these cultures knew incredible details of the cosmos and our planet and our role. I mean, look at the Pyramid of Giza. It's literally a reflection of half the diameter of Earth based on the ratio of the sun to the moon and the connection with like every actual celestial connection with the Earth and what's around us. It's all representation of the law of correspondence, as above, so below. The ancients knew vast amount that we don't know right now, vast amounts. And every time you get these cyclical catastrophes, whether or not it's from massive solar outbursts, coronal mass ejections, or some kind of a comet meteor impact, that civilization gets wiped out, and then more and more knowledge is lost over time, not gained. That's what we got to understand, is that the knowledge all came from a specific place, and I want to go into where that came from. And then every time subsequently, we're on the fourth or fifth epic of this, it's more and more is lost. So then why do we have the right to make it and all the other ones didn't? Because we're prophesized to make it. This age, this time of what we are, it's almost like, if you were to imagine for a second that the entire multiverse is like a great storyboard that's being played out, and you were observing that story and taking everything back in. If you were to have that story be interesting, right? Because really, I think boredom would be one of the worst things you could ever imagine for an infinite being that has to have something entertain it. And I think that we are that entertainment. We're being watched from all over the cosmos because we are the co-creators of our reality, but we don't know it. And so we have others trying to co-create our reality for us so that we have a certain kind of outcome that is not perhaps desirable to some. Now, you brought up some good points, guys. There's a lot of darkness and a lot of things going on right now that are really disturbing. But I want people to shift their minds around to a completely different mindset. Think of it this way. Things only get like this, like I call it like an Orwellian type of approach to laws and rules, kind of ridiculous things, right? It only gets like this when you're at the end of an age. Because the worry is that because every zodiacal age, and Brex brought this up, showing the 12 zodiacs, every zodiac goes from a positive polarity to a negative over and over and over again. And Aquarius is supposed to be that great age where, just like the Yugas talk about, we return from a silver to a golden age. And we're on that precipice right now. But the problem is that when you go into those ages, how that age is defined is based on the collective co-conscious creation that's been presented by those beings there. Hence, if you try to create a world that's based on deception and darkness, and you allow those co-creators that are here to ingest that and project it, you're going to be having a completely different timeline going into that age. And that's what this war, it's a war of information and a war of energy. That's what it's all about. It's about trying to project and control where we're going to go and how our power should be stripped from us so that it can be basically determined by external forces.
Powerful.
Ladies and gentlemen, Matthew LaCroix. That was great. Yeah. You know, what's neat about this conversation we're having is I think it's bringing our A game, because we're also passionate about our, what we research and discuss. That when, like what I hear from you, Matthew, you've ton of facts, ton of information, like the details. I'm more of an abstract kind of guy. You're real detail oriented. Billy, you're real detail oriented. Jay, you're like freaking Hulk with an IQ of 160. So, I'm a crazy guy in the garage, and I'm loving all this, man. This is awesome. You don't get to meet many people like you all. It's really a blessing. And I think that I just wanted to bring up also that the age of Aquarius, it seems like there's something trying to hold on to a power structure.
Exactly.
And I've heard theories and ideas about how our consciousness is actually connected to the magnetic fields of the Earth. And maybe you could look at that with the Schumann resonance, but I don't know. Regardless, if our minds are connected to the magnetic fields of the Earth, the magnetic fields are flipping out right now. And if there's going to be an event, whether it's a solar flare from the sun or something incoming from space, if we could have a powerful enough magnetic field that could protect us to an extent. Whereas if we don't have that protection, it's going to take us back to an age of hunters and gatherers and doing our best to survive versus thrive, except for the pockets that seem to be tucked away in places that they might be able to survive these cataclysms. So there seems like there's these cyclical events and these breakaway civilizations, and the Anunnaki had much power on this planet before these catastrophic events. I remember reading one Sumerian tablet that described the Anunnaki gods prostrated themselves on the ground because of the thunderbird that came, which to me is describing this major plasma event, and it's describing these beings as more personal versus like supermen, right? Because they're seeing this event, so they had to jump ship, they had to take off.
Yeah.
So I would say maybe there's a combination of like these divine spirits that work through peoples, and there's definitely evidence of a different species before these cataclysmic events. And you hear the saying, so easy to do, a caveman could do it. They keep trying to tell us cavemen were stupid, yet they were the ones building megaliths with, we can't even find the tools.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't call them caveman though.
Yeah, well, that's okay. So easy to do, a caveman can do it. What, build a freaking pyramid? I'll be a caveman, sign me up. Hello. You're right though, man. Now we gotta be politically correct about that. They're very brilliant. They seem like the brilliance that was there, we've lost that. You said it. There's so much that we've lost, and that was my 2 cents that I wanted.
Oh, Matt, let me ask you the question. And this is a profound podcast, and I'm definitely humbled and grateful to be with you guys here today. I mean, all of you guys have prodigious intellects and what's most important, bigger hearts. And that's what matters. That's what matters. You know, the mammalian genetics or DNA of whatever we are, whatever kind of transmogrification we are, you know, the mammalian DNA is what allows us to expand our consciousness and to not save, but, you know, help other sentient life forces. But let's just get to it, because I don't want to not talk about it in a little bit of a way for people, because they really do want this answer. Are we all, and we can just go down the path, but are we all of the mindset that the Anunnaki, the Anunu, the Anun, there's so many different names for them depending on culture and stuff like that. Are we all of the mindset that whoever they were at base essence, because I think they've been hijacked. I literally think that consciously there are groups that have attempted to hijack their actual who they were. Are we all at base essence of belief that they were humanoid beings?
Yeah, I believe they were humanoid beings for sure. I mean, just based off of what I read and their interactions with the physical reality and their capability of moving things around and taking off and landing and building and instructing and teaching. And I think it was a lot easier back then to interact with mankind on a face-to-face basis, just because we didn't have any weapons that can hurt them. Now we come gun blazing immediately. I mean, you know, the second we see something, we want to blow it up. And I think back then it was a lot easier for them to interface with us and interact with us and live amongst us, because there's nothing we could have done to hurt them.
So
What
Matt,
if they are?
Oh, go ahead, Rex.
Oh yeah, I was like, what if they are us? Because first of all,
Right,
when you're a 7.5 foot tall Viking dude that comes over to America, you know, 2,000 years ago, there's going to be the natives are, you know, 5.5 feet tall. Maybe some of them are much shorter than that. They've got different colored skin, and they're seeing these giants get off these boats. And I'm wondering if the stories of the giants are referring to people that came over from a different part of the planet. Would it make more sense that they came over from another part of the planet? They started messing with genetics. They got into technology. I mean, they got spaceships. They can definitely mess with genetics. So are they necessarily aliens from out there, or are they people from here?
Well, okay, that's a great point. First of all, I think we got to be careful with that term alien, because I wanted to bring up like how we could maybe look at it in a different way. But I want to point something out to you, Rex. If you remember, we did a while back, we did a show about Moses, and about the real story about Moses that's told more in the book of Deuteronomy and the book of Numbers, where in that, and I highly encourage you guys to go check that show out. very definitely can make a lot of certain Abrahamic religious people angry. But again, I only go for truth. But in those stories, ignore that whole basket going down the river with him becoming this prophet. Ignore that for a minute, because I can't even find evidence that story even existed. What you actually find, and this isn't hidden, you go find in the book of Deuteronomy, in the book of Numbers, right out in the open. And Billy and I have talked about this. It's going to be part of the new book. Is that in that it actually tells a very different story. It tells a story about how Moses was actually chosen by a powerful being that is in that text is known as Yahweh, and it's talked about how he was chosen to be like this ruler of the ancient Hebrew people, the Jewish people, and that's fine. But the problem was there's this whole other aspect of the story that is very, very telling on what was going on at the time. And what was going on at the time is that Moses was commanded by Yahweh, and this is not me making this up. Go read those texts. Go check out that show I did with Rex. But it's the whole story goes into very detailed descriptions about how Moses was commanded to go destroy these giant kings of Canaan. Okay, that region of Canaan was the area of Syria and Lebanon today. Now, Lebanon is where Mount Hermon is, which in the book of Enoch is where the angels descended to Mount Hermon and came down and mingled with humans. But getting back, go read those two texts, because what happens is in that you find out that Moses and the 12 spies of Israel is what you want to call them instead of tribes. Their whole task was to go invade the land of Canaan, which they called where the sons of Anak lived. Okay.
Right. The giants.
Also known as the Raphaim, which is the Hebrew term for giants.
Right.
Now, not
Like
Noah.
basketball players of today.
Yeah. So Moses was commanded, though, to go wipe out these certain bloodline abominations, they called. Okay. And what was happening was those kings of Canaan was the last legacy of the giant kings that used to exist in the entire world. That was the last pocket of them. And there was used to exist all around the world. Magellan saw them in Patagonia. The Romans were fighting them in Germania. There's a huge amount of a whole topic that could go down this road. But the point is,
Matt, there's some still here right now.
Well, perhaps, but in terms of like a royal bloodline giant, what you find out is that Moses was going to conquer the last of this bloodline, part of Anak, the sons of Anak. His name was King Og, O-G, okay? And there's very, very detailed information about him, where he was the last of these giant bloodline kings. He was, when Moses went and they conquered all of these cities, they said that they conquered 60 walled cities, killing every woman, children, and person in these entire cities, because their idea was they was commanded to wipe them out and cleanse the region because of these abominations. They kill King Og, okay, he kills him, and they find his bed. And his bed is reported to be 13 and a half feet long. Okay. Ironclad, 13 and a half feet long. And he supposedly was 9 to 10 feet. And he was being hunted down to be killed. Now, I want to add one more layer to that. In Avaris, Egypt, there was a discovery made in 2012, I believe it was, where they found this huge catch of giant hands. Giant hands. Okay.
Right.
And when they found them, they found text and information that went along with it, that one of these Egyptian kings of that era was paying a certain amount of gold if you could cut off and kill these giants that ruled in different places, and you would get a certain amount of money if you could bring back those hands. So these giants, these Nephilim, these bloodline ancestors that connect all the way back up to the royal Anuna, they were very real, and they were being exterminated from the earth by certain individuals because they had bloodlines. And this goes back into what we were just talking about at the very beginning with Berossus's list of kings in Babylon and the Uruk list of kings and sages and the Sumerian king list, because they lived far longer than other genetics did. And that's why they were being sought to be wiped out, because of some of those connotations.
That's interesting. That's very
go ahead. Just real quick, Rex, there's a book that you guys can get. It's a very obscure book. It's called The Solomon Island Mysteries from 2010. And I read it back then. And it's a real accounting of the Solomon Islands and what goes on there. Now, if you guys know anything about the Solomon Islands, it's literally almost impossible to get there even today in today's day and age. Like, you have to traverse like this giant wave that takes a very large ship. There's all sorts of gems. There's all sorts of stuff. If you look into the amazing history of the Solomon Islands and what goes on there, but there are human beings through World War II and up until the modern day who literally can prove they have images and photos. All this stuff is suppressed. There are wild, what you would call indigenous giants still living there that are somewhere between 15 and 20 feet tall. Now, if you read that book, it's pretty amazing stuff. And again, it's from 2010. It's called Solomon Islands Mysteries. I had that book. I read it a long time ago. But to your point, Matt, there's no question the giants are real. The Smithsonian has all sorts of red-haired, from antiquity in the States, from Colorado, from Eastern California, even in Northern California. Some of these bones,
the upper Midwest, especially too,
13 to 14 feet tall. Okay. They have these, they're suppressed, they're covered up. They've even found them, Rex, in Colorado. There was like a giant underground catch of them somewhere in the Red River area. So all of this stuff is being suppressed. So the bigger question for us to answer this and to identify is who is suppressing this, pre-Diluvian race of giants and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really come from super high up, because even the Smithsonian has actually even admitted that they did dump some of these bones in the ocean.
Yep.
Which is crazy that finally came out, but I guess they had a little bit of pressure, but they admitted to it. And somebody a small group of people very, very high up want a specific agenda to take place. They want to be the ordainers of destiny.
Yeah, exactly.
On the consciousness of mankind and where they want to direct us. And they know that information about giants and Nephilim and spaceships in the ancient past and ancient technology, that doesn't allow them to collapse the reality that they want.
Right.
So they have to keep hitting us with all this propaganda and this control and this controlled information to create the reality that they want. And we have to find a way to snap out of that reality. Which
is that, Billy, to your point, is that the remnants of the Anuna still here? And are they incarnated in physical bodies as consciousness? Or are they still the original left behinds or leftovers? Because as you said, Matt, they're essentially immortal beings.
Yeah.
They literally survived hundreds of thousands of years.
It's so possible that it's actually kind of scary, because these beings could be still here, or they could have done what Thoth talks about. They clone themselves and create new bodies and then transfer their consciousness into a new body. And by that method, they can go on literally forever.
That's what I think is happening. I think that they have that technology. They're transferring consciousness. I really do. I think that's the most believable, especially in this contaminated environment, right? Because if an immortal being was here, there's not a lot of fresh water.
No.
They can't make monoatomic gold as easily now as they could then.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting stuff.
I wanted to make a point real quick. When you brought up the transferring consciousness, if the light can do it, the dark can do it.
Of course.
Yeah.
And it seems as if as much turmoil, there's an opposing faction. No, for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction in this dualistic universe. And so if we are reaching these higher levels of enlightenment, these higher levels of consciousness, then there's going to be an opposing faction to kind of be like the balance board.
Exactly.
But I thought that was brilliant how you brought that up. And somebody else brought up, I think it was Matthew, you brought up, does the matrix run, or maybe it was you, Jay, or both of you, does the matrix run off of negative energy? And maybe there's two matrices. Maybe there's a matrix for negative energy and a matrix for positive energy. And when people start to realize that and they start to manifest their thoughts quicker and things start to really just click and become abundant and healthy and exciting for them, maybe it's because they're somehow bilocating into that happy matrix. This duality is like merging together, kind of like interlaced when you've got high definition TVs now, where you've got these lines that interlace to give you better detail. Maybe somehow we're everywhere and nowhere at the same time, and we're attempting to to go with this universal consciousness of vibration. And as the clock turns, we have to adapt, or we, kind of stay in this stagnant state.
Yeah.
But I wanted to show this. Let's talk about reptiles now. Let's talk about the reptilian thing.
I wanted to ask everybody real quick before you show it, Rex, and we go,
Yeah.
I'll ask Matt first, but Rex, you explain, but I want us to say yes or no, they exist, but go ahead, Rex.
Well, who's going first? Yes or no?
No, you're about to share something. Go. You go. Matt can go after.
No. Okay, so the whole reptilian thing. First of all, dinosaurs, like everything we're taught in school about history, to me now, just about everything is questionable
Totally
because
alive.
history continues to rewrite itself.
Right.
So why not there be reptoid beings thousands or millions of years ago? They were like scientists. They were bipedal reptoid dudes, or reptoid chicks. I mean, we've got plenty of artifacts that are 7,000 to 10,000 years, actually closer to 7,000 years old, that show these reptoid type beings.
Yeah.
And they don't. I'm not scared of that dude. I mean, maybe if he's really hungry and he's looking for, but no, I mean, and I would say this: there's reptiles that are vegan. So maybe these reptoids, maybe a lot of them were vegan, and maybe they had a civil war just like humans did, and maybe the bad guys won, and they, they're pitching it. And like you said, they want to control the waveform, they want to control the thoughts and the people's minds. So in order for them to do so, they just paint the picture of, oh yeah, 8-foot tall reptoids eat people. That's what they do. And then if you think that, you're either crazy, or maybe there really are. I don't know, but maybe they don't. And here's another one I wanted to show real quick. This one right here. I love this one because this is a female reptoid chick. And guess what? She's not eating anybody. She's not like devouring on somebody's flesh. She's actually nursing her child. Right. So, I mean, does that look evil to you? Maybe if you don't know what it is and it's different, but is it even a reptile? I don't know. Maybe it's a dinosaur. I mean, there's so many questions I have that I wouldn't be surprised if this whole narrative about reptoids and they're so evil. Well, maybe there's a little pocket of them that were, and now they're controlling the media, and they've figured out a way to influence these groups in a telepathic kind of mindset. That's what I think they're doing. They're controlling people's minds.
It's a reptilian consciousness. Go ahead, Matt. But let me just say this real quick, because I know I've told you guys this. Okay. This book, The Murder of Reality by Pierre Sabak, is the most insane, well-researched book that has ever been put forth in humanity. And his thesis, which I won't read right here, but I'll send this, and Rex, you can share this as a link or whatever, because I posted this somewhere, in the show notes. But I mean, he says that they are a predator consciousness, which is exactly what you just said they are. Essentially, they're controlling people's minds, again, through whatever means in this holographic construct that we exist in. So whether or not they really are 8 to 12 foot alpha draconian beings like the movie Jupiter Ascending shows us or not, they are some sort of parasitic negative consciousness that is keeping people down here. Go ahead, Matt.
All right. So
could they be the
I can definitely
geneticists?
present some data. Rex, can you bring that picture up of the that you had up a second ago? Okay, so I'm going to provide my analysis, and I would be happy for you guys to challenge it. That's what healthy discussions are all about. But Rex is going to bring that Ubaid artifact up really quick, and I want to talk about it. Okay, now this is the #1 piece of evidence in the world to use for reptilians. But I want to step back for a second before I present some of how I believe this goes. Yes, there's definitely some weird aspects of ancient Earth history where there was like 100. I absolutely do think that some scientific data, evidence-driven data based on the millions and millions and millions of bones that have been discovered, is undeniable. There were gigantic reptiles that lived on this planet. That is undeniable. That happened. Anyone who wants to challenge that, there's literally millions of bones around the world that have been found. It's very complex. That there was definitely a world here that was all reptiles. How that came to be is the ultimate question. Was there some kind of a race or a group that was more advanced that then created like the progenitors, kind of like the Anunnaki did with humans later, that created that? And if that's true, is it possible that that world where that existed was a deliberate event to destroy and disrupt the climate of the planet so that those types of beings, those groups could not exist anymore. Yes, it's entirely possible that they could have engineered some kind of an asteroid or comet to literally hit in a certain place to create an environment where the Earth's entire axis and seasons shifted to promote a world where they would be destroyed. Those are some confusing aspects that I want to admit do exist, okay? And whether or not some of those beings, some of those like velociraptors somehow did change into some kind of a more intelligent state, we don't know. There's so much time in between there, millions and millions of years of just complete unknowingness, that I will point out that is something that we want to keep in mind to not understand what role that plays. Having said that, there are concerns I have with us jumping on these artifacts and saying they're reptilian. So you just had that Ubaid artifact up there on the screen a second ago. For those who don't know, the Ubaid culture was a culture that existed around the same time as the Sumerians. Okay, that was an area that was in the Fertile Crescent region. Now, notice that artifact has a human body. Okay, it's got a head that looks different, but a human body. I believe that is completely symbolic. It does not represent a reptilian being at all. I believe it represents the headedness, the mentality of what that being was. She's nursing a baby, right? She's got two breasts, just like a human. She's nursing a baby, but she's got a serpent head. I think that depiction is of some powerful royal queen or someone very, very powerful who is extremely intelligent. Now, I want to get into why I think that. It's very easy to see the way something looks in a linear form and just jump on it being linear, except that we have to understand that the serpent and the dragon are two of the most important symbols of ancient cultures throughout history. And the other one that comes in is the eagle and the griffin. Now, what do these mean? Well, I want to give you an example just to right out of the gate for people to know what the serpent is and how it's not necessarily representative or connected in any way to a reptile. Okay. First off, the dragon is the metamorphosis of the serpent. That's why in the Aztec and the Mayan realms, you find Kukulkan and Quetzalcoatl are called the feathered serpents, meaning something that ascends to a higher form. Now, think about it right now. Our highest form of establishment, the medical industry, the rod of Asclepius. Rex, can you bring up the rod of Asclepius really quick? You can type in medical symbol, it'll probably pull up too.
Talk about the caduceus staff, correct?
And then also, like Jay just said, is the staff of Hermes, the caduceus. Both of those symbols, Rex is going to pull them up. Both of those symbols have a serpent interwoven in the middle at the top with wings for ascension, especially with the staff of Hermes. Now, we know if you look at ancient Hindu cultures that the Kundalini energy of energy vortex of our bodies connecting to higher chakra centers to reach Kundalini is always shown as a coiled energy. It's a coiled energy that unfolds. And that's why the ancients use the symbol of a serpent, because it looks just like the vibrational frequency of a human being as their energy ascends to a higher state. Symbolism is literally the language of the ancients. Mathematics may be the language of the universe, but symbolism is the language of the ancients. And that's why I'm going to just give you another example. So in the creators of the civilization, the pre-civilizations of the Maya and the Aztec, okay, and even down into the pre-Inca, those gods, those beings are shown as a serpent dragon, but really it was just a symbol to show that was the mentality that created those civilizations. We see all throughout depictions of I'll give you an example. Thoth in ancient Egypt had the symbol of an ibis head. He did not have an ibis head. That's because he's a careful teacher. So you use an ibis because it's a bird that's extremely careful and patient. So that was why he had that depiction. Whereas in Egypt, you also see all the heads of the lions and the crocodiles. Those are simply symbols to show different mentalities. Now, I want to get back to one important critical point here. In the Americas, getting back, Kukulkan and Quetzalcoatl and Viracocha, the creator gods of the Maya, the Aztec, and the pre-Inca, they all have very detailed descriptions of what that teacher looked like. very detailed. You could find it in each culture, and they all say the same thing. It was in a tall Caucasian man with a long white beard. That's how Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl, and Viracocha are all described the exact same way. Now, the last point I want to make, when Cortez conquered the Aztec Empire, when he met Moctezuma in Teotihuacan in 1519, Moctezuma gave him like keys to the whole kingdom, basically. They would not have conquered. The Aztec was the largest army in all the Americas. They would have got wiped out. There was only a few hundred of them versus thousands of soldiers and armies of the Aztec. The only reason they were able to do that was because Moctezuma thought he was the returning god Quetzalcoatl. That's what he thought, because Cortez looked exactly like Quetzalcoatl did, okay? And I want to point out that I believe that's on purpose, where the church, okay, the Spanish Empire and connections with all of these other ancient secret societies knew that Quetzalcoatl was supposed to be prophesized to return during that time period. And so Cortez was supposed to imitate him, hence how he was able to achieve conquering the entire Aztec. So the symbol of the serpent and dragon are some of the most important ancient symbols in the world for reaching higher stages of consciousness and energy, and also the divine feminine, whereas the eagle and the griffin represent the divine masculine. That's why there have been secret societies of the Brotherhood of the Serpent, the Brotherhood of the Dragon, and the Brotherhood of the Eagle, and they've essentially been fighting back and forth, these factions of secret societies, for thousands of years, and it still continues today.
It's intergalactic chess. And you know, it's also fascinating when you look at these statues, like the one in the center here. I just want to show this off real quick. It's got the elongated skull. Notice that?
It does, which is very interesting. We find that all over the world.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. There's so many questions and so many possibilities. Could these beings that we call reptoids or shapeshifters, and somebody made a comment in the comment section that I started shapeshifting when we started talking about shapeshifters, and you're actually right, that did happen, but it was the webcam, it wasn't me, really. So yeah, what are we talking about, guys? No. Fast Jay's like, what? I love it. This is so cool. So was there a time when reptoids walked the earth? Were they our geneticists? Are we sharing the same genes? But did the reptoids have mammalian DNA also? Or were they just straight up reptiles that just thought about them, you know, just thought about survival and found some way to, you know, had some other intelligence that's there. So they were incredible technologists. I don't know.
It's a combination of things, really.
Yeah.
And I dig what Matt was talking about, because that's a perspective that I really never fully considered, to be quite honest with you. I have studied the Ube culture extensively. Now, there is somewhat limited information on them, because the culture obviously is kind of lost into, the knowledge was lost about them. But they did find quite a bit of the statuettes.
Right.
What is interesting, some of the statuettes show one of the reptilian males, some of them being, you know, royalty or kings, having that staff. Some obviously being like queens, but some also looking just like standard workers. And then if you look at the Nag Hammadi scripts, if we go from the physical form to the multidimensional form, they talk about something that looks like, that resembles in the etherical form what they would consider to be a gray alien and a reptilian,
Right.
that had the capability of manipulating mankind's consciousness, and specifically the reptilian form of this multidimensional, fourth dimensional being would like connect to the back of a human being and like manipulate them or play them like a puppet, kind of like what even Rex had talked about a little earlier. And so, and also you, Jay. So it's kind of weird how you have, you know, both of these. Now, also, I remember a story that I was researching about, you know, reptilians, and there was this city, believe it or not, underground in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Where the lizard people catacomb city, and these people were actually hunted down to try to be killed and everything else. But it made the news. It made the newspaper, and it had become kind of really popular at the time, that there was this underground cavern underneath Los Angeles, which has been documented, that they supposedly found some of these reptilian type of people at one time, and obviously a long time ago, but not in the ancient past. So it's pretty interesting. You still hear these stories of physical beings that represent this reptilian look, that have these features. And then also, going back into the Nag Hammadi scripts, where they have this multidimensional capability, maybe to phase shift in and out of our third dimension, but still have the capability of controlling mankind's consciousness. So it's pretty interesting. I believe that they exist in both formats, just because all I have to go by is circumstantial evidence, and I can only go by what our ancestors left behind. And I'm kind of assuming, since these people didn't have Netflix and all these other kind of things to take up their brain, that they only really talked about things that they thought were probably real. And I think that there's a possibility, I'm not saying for sure, but I think it's a possibility that they were not only some physical form, something that maybe had represented or looked very similar to a reptilian type of being that came here from another planet, but also, probably this multidimensional. I know what's interesting about this draconian, this, alpha draconis and this draconian. I know that that's tied really like to Greece as well.
And Egypt.
And yes. Egypt, yes. It's pretty interesting. And so this thing seems to persist all the way down the timeline.
Right.
It's almost as if like, man, something really happened that can be affiliated with some type of either reptilian consciousness or way of thinking, or something physical. It's really intriguing, man. I've really been looking into it for the last few years. Obviously, the information is far few in between, but what some of the cultures have talked about, besides it being more archetypal and metaphoric, there seems to have been something here that kind of did look reptilian.
Okay, so I'm going to go. This is the highlight of my show now, because I prepared a lot of information, and I am prepared to go as deep as you guys want to go on this. Now, let me just say first off, to the man that we owe all of our lives on this show to, the great Gerald Clark. Gerald and I had very deep discussions about the reptilians. Okay, Gerald did not think, Gerald knew that they existed. I had many conversations. I probably have IM threads on my Facebook that if I wanted to somehow go and find him and talk about the things that he said, he really, that one conversation with an alien or whatever, talking about reptilians, Gerald and I had really deep conversations. So this book just came out in 2020 in December. It's by Neil Haig. Have you had Neil on your show, Rex? Okay, get him on your show. Talk to him about this book. It's called Orion's Door, Symbols of Consciousness and Blueprints of Control. The story of Orion's influence over humanity. He has a chapter in here about the reptilians. It's the best I've seen other than Pierre Sabac's book. Now, Pierre Sabac's book, again, The Murder of Reality. I want to read this just a couple of paragraphs because it's essential. Now, again, Pierre is the foremost researcher on etymology and the root origin language of the context of spirituality in all the organized religions. I mean, he is a genius of the highest order. And again, his knowledge of all the cultures is amazing. But this is what he said. This book took him 17 years to write. And he says, this work has taken me nearly 17 years to research and is intended as an academic textbook on the cultic symbolism of the snake. It's primarily a comprehensive study of language. The book addresses the ultimate crime, the murder of reality. It details historically the involvement on this planet of a non-human race of creatures that are reptilian in appearance only. They are a predator that rules the human mind through thought manipulation implanted in the fabric of language itself. Billy, at the beginning, I was telling you that Pierre's thing is he calls it the dialectic, and they have a double entendre. The intention of the predator is to hold humanity in a construct or a conceptual framework that is reptilian in characteristic. Engineered through the inheritance of language, this research demonstrates a universal code written in symbols. So again, the Brotherhood of the Serpent, the priest class, a lot of these ancient societies have been taught by them, in my opinion, to understand this stuff. He says, my book is the first of its kind. It analyzes the control of thought and its influence upon collective reality via etymology, which is, again, the study of words, which means in Greek, etumos. In essence, the human species has had its thought processes hijacked and rewired. Sadly, we have lost the ability to think like a mammal. Trapped like a rat in a maze, paralyzed in a construct not of our making, the handlers of man lurk deep in their cesspits. My book casts some light and reveals its shadow, this terrible force working at the core of humanity. He even has a picture of them from, I guess, I don't know what ancient text, but he calls them the Serpentinegua. Now, again, this book is from 2010 and it's 587 pages, and it is deeply cited and researched. All I will say is there is something, Billy, you kind of hit it out of the park. It's a consciousness now, whether it's fourth dimensional, second dimensional, again, etheric, astral, whatever, that is still puppeteering the lower vibrational beings on this planet. If you want to call it reptilian, you want to call it parasitic, you want to call them archons, whatever it is, they are energy vampires. And when you're vibrating down here, they can, as you said, Billy, puppet you. And you said it too, Rex. And again, what do we see them in physical form? I mean, there are people out there. I mean, no, Rex, you've had what's his name, who's been on your show, who's talked about seeing reptilian. There are definitely people in our community that have seen reptilians. I know a woman who has seen one. Do they shapeshift? I don't really know. I think they use some sort of technology. You know, again, if they're a fourth dimensional consciousness and they can inhabit a physical waveform, you know, avatar body, that would be something that would easily be, you know, come off as technology. But there's no way. And, you know, one of my friends, because they knew we were doing the show today, that he wanted me to mention the dragons and the whole mud fossil and all of that. You know, there's so much evidence now that they can see of literally there were dragons on this planet. I will just say too, that I think that dinosaurs is a total scam. I'm a huge dinosaur fan. I grew up with dinosaurs. I played time with dinosaurs. The majority of the dinosaur information, in my opinion, is the dragons. And they have manipulated us again to teach us about T-Rex and Velociraptor and all these different things. But I think that it really is dinosaurs were the dragons. And again, there is now imagery all over this planet from satellites that shows like these gigantic dragon-esque beings, you know, life forms that are laying all over as like, you know, giant sedimentaceous, fossilized, whatever. And they look like dragons. I mean, again, you know, if it looks like one, you know, it's not speaking like one because it's ancient, but I just think that we have been, again, what's the word? Hijacked mentally, as Sabak says in the book, to think that these beings never existed. And Matt, your experience, I mean, your explanation is amazing. I agree with all of that, with the Kundalini and the energy and the consciousness of the serpent and all of that stuff. And there's obviously Viracocha and Quetzalcoatl and all of that stuff, you know, proves that these were probably like amazing cultural builders who came out after the deluge to rebuild society and give mankind the fire. But I still think that there's just too much proof elsewise. I also want to say that they have engineered, meaning them, reptilians or whoever they are, the removal from the world from them. There's just not enough information. It seems like they talk about the dragon, they talk about the serpent, they talk about all these different things, but then there's nothing there other than just like impressing on our consciousness that the dragon guards the treasure layer. So there's something about this where they have made this amazing effort to, again, rewrite or erase their presence from our historical narrative. And so that's my take. But again, I encourage anyone who wants to find out more about the reptilian presence as a consciousness to read Pierre Sabac's book, The Murder of Reality. It is a profound book.
Can I add something to that, guys?
Please.
Okay, so I want to just comment on what Jay just said a second ago. So I have actually gone on paleontology digs and actually found dinosaur bones. And I've seen extensive footprints. I've done a lot of geology work. So I'm not sure why you would think that dinosaurs aren't real, but then dragons are. That's a little confusing to me in that context. But I do support the idea that we don't know all the life forms that exist in the universe, and there's no way for us to distinctively say whether or not something doesn't or does exist just based on the lack of information that we have. But I do firmly believe, and I want to add just a couple of layers to that, is that getting back to George Smith's book, The Chaldean Account of Genesis, one of the really interesting things he mentions that I haven't talked about is that when he was looking at the tablets that came from the Babylonians, they talked about how there was two principal races in on Earth and that define the cosmos. And they had names that they gave for them, and they had descriptions that were very interesting to me, because the first one they called were the Adamu, which is the race of man. Adamu was one of the ancient terms used. Billy and I have done shows where he's also called the Dapa, the first perfect man, when mankind was established in a state of perfection. But there's another term that has come up from Babylon that I've never seen before, and I think it was like a term that nearly died out. He goes on to describe a second set of beings. He calls them, according to the Babylonians, the Sarku, Sarku. But he says that they were under the description of them is almost identical to the way that Genesis describes the two principal races of the race of man and the children of God, which I found to be a very interesting way to connect to what the Emerald Tablets says as well. Because in the Emerald Tablets, Thoth talks about how there's a group of creator beings that are literally like part of Source that go out there, like they call them the children of men in there, and they have a couple different names. But their role is very interesting because apparently they're of course in this context, God, guys, I know it's a very polluted term, but whatever this intelligent creator of the multiverse is, where everything is based on these perfect golden ratio numbers and designs on perfection, right? And the more you look into the design of the universe, the more you look at the fact that if anything, if it was even close to design by chance, it would all have imploded on itself and never existed. We know for a fact that there's a creative designer. Now, but that's what's interesting about the Sarku, who I think are the same as the Anuna and the Anunnaki, is that not some group of beings, personally, I don't believe that they're not like a group of beings of humanoids like on a planet that became so advanced that they then traveled out and then influenced other places. I don't think that's how this is at all. In fact, I think that the more that I've studied this, that they may literally be like extensions of Source, some kind of a creative and intelligent energy that's supposed to go out and create and everything come back. I think that's where the terms angels and demons really comes in, is that they're the same thing, but they're part of like a higher realm group of races. Now, I want to get into what the whole point of this is, that they came here, okay? They came here and they created us based on many different reasons. One, not wanting to be part of the physical reality of being in a place because they saw themselves as higher form, but we're supposed to be created in their image as a god in a physical realm where there are physical ramifications for their actions, where being this individual, you can incarnate into any of these humans and experience this kind of reality. It's like if you were advanced beings from wherever, creator beings or even Source, you could almost experience what it's like to be in a physical reality through us, because we are basically the perfect creation of those beings. But which is why I think there's so much interest from so many in how our story goes and why our story may be so important, because of all those factors. Now, whether or not there are reptilians involved in that from some ancient grudge over maybe how we destroyed their the place that they used to exist in here, I don't know, but I can tell you one thing is that we are being competed over from either side of duality, which the Anuna talk very extensively, the Anunnaki talk very extensively about how they assumed roles in every aspect of our reality, roles in a negative and a positive way. And so therefore, I wonder if the enemies of who we think are something are maybe just part of the same exact system of maybe creating certain stresses to push humanity to another level. I think it's complicated though.
Two things I left off real quick before any of you guys speak. You said the Emerald Tablets, and Billy knows better than everyone that Thoth actually talked about the Dark Brotherhood, and he said that they were reptilian in nature.
He said serpent-headed. He didn't say reptilian. He said serpent-headed.
Okay, well, he's saying about as close as you could say it. He also talked about how to glamour them and how a specific word, which was Kniningen, could make them reveal their natural countenance. Now, the other thing I left off, very important, I won't go into detail, is all of the special projects people, the original luminaries, the Beheld the Pale Horse guy, they all talk about the reptilians being underground in, Mexico, Dulce, Area 51, all of these underground honeycomb cities or whatever's going on. So my opinion, and I didn't say this and I apologize, is that Billy, they somehow stayed here. They moved into the inner earth, whatever that is. And that's how they run people or puppet people from a reptilian conscious standpoint. You know, they have high tech, whatever. But that's just, again, my opinion. I left that off, but I felt that that was important that we didn't forget about those people mentioning that. I mean, there's a lot that's been written about that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jay Campbell. And you've got Yoda behind you, dude. That's awesome.
I mean, that helps, bro.
That's
Yeah.
a really cool backdrop. I like that.
It is.
That's you, but you're like 7 foot tall and weigh 240 and bench 800
I'm a
pounds.
reptilian, bro. I'm just keeping my face covered.
I've been called a reptilian so many times in the last few months. It's crazy. He's a reptilian. His eyes don't blink, and you know, whatever. That's a whole nother thing. But yeah,
He doesn't age.
yeah. I don't age, and I'm a. You know, it's just it's been wild. It's been a wild last few months. All I can do is laugh. You know, that's all I can do.
Nope.
Take it as a badge of honor.
Keeps you in
Yeah.
love, bro. When you laugh, you stay in the love vibration.
That's it, man. That's it.
This
Oh,
is
man.
awesome. I really feel like this is one of our best conversations we've had.
Amazing.
It is. It is for sure. Yeah, this is deep stuff, man.
So, and it's going to get better because remember, Matt gave us quotes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
we have
at some point, if we want to switch over to gears, we can talk about like the positive aspects of going into the age of Aquarius and some of the teachings and the mindset that we should follow for that transition.
Yep, I'm with it.
Sounds good.
Rock and roll.
You guys want to do that now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do it, man.
Perfect.
Okay, so for those who don't know, so normally we read like an ancient text. Today's choice, because of moving into the age of Aquarius, I think that today's reading is excellent. It's one of my favorite things that's ever been said, I guess you could say, to be honest. For those who don't know, Terence McKenna, one of the most brilliant minds of our time. And for those you may come in contact of his brother, Dennis McKenna, is still alive and does shows, and they're famous for having a lot of psychoactive experiences allowed to them to enter other realms and come back with all this profound knowledge and all these profound teachings. And Terence McKenna was the head of a great movement that we're going to talk about at the end of this reading, known as the Transcendentalism movement. And that's a really, really interesting aspect that is a little bit lost today. But so what I want to do is we're going to do a group reading before we get to the end of this. And because people love those. And so today's reading comes from one of my favorite talks ever done called The Light in Nature and Transcendental Object lecture. And it was one of the last lectures that Terence McKenna did before he died. And I do think that he was one of the most brilliant men of all of human history. He was a truly brilliant man. And so I guess we're gonna read a passage from that. And this is directly related to how last time we did a Mayan prophecy reading, to this reading will be in a similar mindset, which is, where are we going? We're going into the age of Aquarius. How are we going to get there? And what are these tools that we need to take with us on that difficult journey? So Billy, why don't you go ahead and get us started here?
Beautiful, beautiful intro. What is happening now in this archaic revival, a parking back to cultural models 10 to 25,000 years old, because the profane fall into history is actually ending. The way the fall of history ends is with the progeny of Adam, the human race, recovering the control of human form and the control of the human soul. Rex.
Yep. The ability to turn ourselves into whatever we wish to be. This comes through the union of the imagination through understanding into nature, the invocation of the dream. This is what the Australian Aborigines is talking about, or also this is what the dream time is.
Beautiful. The message that nature is trying to give, the steering signal on the human species, comes through the accessing of the shamanic dimension outside of history. Revolutions are made by the tiny percentage of the population. That would be us, guys. It means being aware of the vastness of the options, of the precipice that late 20th century historical human beings stand on.
We are about to leave for the stars. This is what is happening on the planet. To do that, energy must be marshaled. The lessons of the long march to this moment have to be collated, sifted, refined, concentrated. That is the alchemical goal in our destiny.
Wow.
So what that all comes down to is this idea of this spiritual movement that is largely unknown today, called Transcendentalism. And the whole core concept behind that is the belief that the inherent goodness and potential exists within people to reach higher states of consciousness and energy through a greater connection with nature and the cosmos. This is highly dependent on the purity of the individual through nurturing environments that both promote self-reliance as well as creativity and imagination. Transcendentalism is strongly influenced by ancient cultural beliefs, such as Hinduism, in order to establish a connection with the mind, body, and spirit back to the nature and the universe.
Beautiful.
Right on.
Beautiful stuff, man. This is
So,
a great
I guess
podcast.
I just wanted to, I want to get you guys take on this as well. And you can all, I think it would be great for us to all give just some tips and some understanding of how people can find some happiness during these dark times as we're entering a new age, and how what we're going through is simply just that the end struggle before a new horizon, a new dawning ahead of us. And I just want to point out, like, what he's saying there is that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience here who have lost our connection with nature, who have lost our connection with the cosmos. And through the unity of what's known as the Trinity, the mind, body, and soul, that's what encompasses our entire state of energy. When we're able to balance those three things, we're able to become gods. And that is how we're supposed to enter this new age. But like the reading said, it's not based on the overwhelming majority of the population. It's based on a tiny percentage of the population leading the pack, carrying the torch into that new age, so that the rest won't be lost in darkness.
Absolutely. And I would say, one of the things I recommend to people a lot is understanding the true power that's inside of us already.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are literally walking around here waiting to die so they can live.
Right.
People have heard me say this before. You're supposed to live right now, because your goal right now is to learn, understand, and ascend through conscious thought, not to just basically run the software program until your body drops, and you're just going to come back again and do it all over again. You have to learn in this lifetime. You also have to enjoy this life as well. I think the real mission here is to bring heaven to earth, and that's something that's been a lost thought. It's, and I believe that the way that people right now, 85% of the world is religious, and the way that people are operating with their prayer life, because I do believe in prayer, but I think they're doing it from the mindset of this reptilian teaching, where it's all about begging, hoping, wishing that outside sources will come in and save you. Whereas in my opinion, that does not seem to work. I think what really does work is understanding the power that's already inside of you, and then understanding that the power that created everything in the entire universe, that spark, is inside of every atom in your body, and that you yourself have the same authority to command realities as well. And that we begin to pray from understanding as it is already done. And that is actual prayer. It's complete. They have a saying in China where they say wuxia, wuxia at this healing facility. And wuxia means it's a prayer that they pray over sick people and the people are healed. What the prayer is actually saying, it is done. That's the whole prayer. But they say it with such conviction, and the person that's also saying it with them is believing that it's already done. And so that person actually can be cured. And so we ourselves have to have that same conviction, that same understanding, that same knowledge and understanding that we ourselves are God, and also God is us. It's not an insult to the creator or creators. What it's saying is we understand the true power of nature of the universe and what's been imbued into us and how to utilize that in our lives. And I think when people really understand the power that's inside of them, and that they themselves have ability to make changes in their reality tunnel and even control what's outside of that collectively, then we'll start to see some light. They'll start to see some relief, and also they'll start to ascend to higher levels of thought and even more success in whatever it is in their life.
Well said.
Boy, that was so beautifully profound. Rex, are you okay if I go, or you want to go?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Okay, so consciousness is my jam. You guys know that now. It's all I really talk about. I enjoy these kind of conversations with your guys' prodigious intellects, and it was such an amazing podcast today. But this is the kind of stuff. All I read is consciousness. I'm reading a book right now called "Consciousness is What I Am." by Joel S. Goldsmith. It's a profound book. But to what you just said, Billy, and let me just say, without like labeling or judging or condemning, religion, whether it's controlled by the reptilians or not, is a worship of the external. And Billy, you just said it beautifully. Everything that any of us need is inside us.
Mm-hmm.
We are our own saviors. Let me read you a couple of the statements from this book. What is the secret of enlightenment? The answer is that mystics discovered that there is a part of a man and woman's being which is divine, and that is the light within themselves, which is a presence and a power. The Christ of your own consciousness is the illumined infinite divine consciousness breaking through the mind of an individual and appearing as a human being. Okay.
Beautiful.
Now, if anyone can understand what that means, all of the ancient sages, the ones that Matt has researched, these illumined beings, they were teaching us that we had the powers inside us. We were our own saviors. If Yeshua, aka Jesus, aka the Christ, whatever, was a real live being that did incarnate in here, it was to teach mankind that each of us had the power to raise our vibration through love, through peace, through kindness, through compassion, through service to the greater good. That's all that you need.
Yeah.
Every single one of us, you said, Billy, too, I'm repeating you, we all can create our heaven and earth through our words and our thoughts and our actions. It is a mindset.
Yeah.
I am is the divine consciousness. And again, at the beginning of understanding this, all of us have to get to a place that all we are is consciousness. You're not going to die. Consciousness is energy, which is infinite and ever expanding. So get out of this mindset that you have this finite existence in this physical body. These are avatars for our soul evolution and growth. Something you said before, Billy, which was profound. And again, this will piss off a lot of religious people because they've been forced to understand that religion and saviors are external. But God, source, universal consciousness, the creator, as Matt said, I love that, the multiverse creator is learning too. Okay. When you want to think, and don't get this crossed, of course it's omniscient, but it also is learning through the holographic spark fractals of souls, which is each of us, which is every sentient creature and non-sentient probably. It's learning from our experiences. So yes, we are in a simulated holographic constructural reality paradigm, but we are all doing things to evolve and grow our soul. If you choose the V, you needed that for soul contrast and growth. If you don't, like us, and you're like, nah, man, I'm sovereign, I'm not going to do that, that's also for soul growth. Nobody is doing anything that is wrong. We're all walking the same path back to creation, to perfection. And no path is better than another, and no speed or rate of speed is different. It's all the same. We cannot judge or condemn any other person for what they do, because at base soul essence, everything is for evolution and growth. And I'm just grateful that I have this ability to speak to all four of you guys, that we can put this information out there, because each of us has a choice every single morning when we wake up to be the greatest, the best, the most loving, the most creative, the most concerned, the most compassionate, the most combined human that we can choose to be. And I'll just end by saying that we have to be more being and less doing. And we can be more being by waking up every single morning and having a ritual of attaining that inner still peace through meditation, through contemplation, through introspection, through grounding in nature. I see Matt's amazing stories on Facebook. He's up in the mountains at like 10,000, 12,000 feet in the snow. And I'm like, that is God.
Yeah.
That is where you are communing with God. The energy and frequency of nature is God in physical third dimensional reality. And each of us needs to, and needs is a bad word, but chooses to get into nature as much as possible. And you will start absorbing that divine frequency. So guys, I love all of you, man. And I appreciate being here with you.
Well
Love
said,
you too,
Jay.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Love you, brother. And I wanted to show y'all something real quick. And what I wanted to say in finishing up this amazing podcast and looking forward to the next one. This is a recent white paper, Kinematic Self-Replication in Reconfigurable Organisms. It's describing how scientists in a laboratory took, scraped some cells off of these frogs.
Mm-hmm.
And they used artificial intelligence and really high level computer technologies to get these, essentially they turned into Pac-Man and they started recreating with the matter around them. And it's telling me that there's consciousness in everything. They're called xenobots. There's consciousness in everything. And life itself is designed to survive and designed to co-create. And that's the beauty of the situation that we're in. So a few notes that I put together here was, let's be protectors of life, earth, creation, and imagination. What will you do when thoughts become reality? Your thoughts. Will you be more careful about what you think? What will you do to change the world when you have the power? And act upon those thoughts that you know are powers that can and do manifest into your reality. So how do you impress your parents? How do you impress your family? And how will you impress your creator? What do you do to be a good steward of the earth? Be the change you want to see.
Well said. Rick.
Beautiful. Excellent.
Right on. Well,
This
you
has
guys,
been
yeah, the legends amongst legends.
great.
And looking forward to doing this again. I also wanted to give a shout out to your website. So let me go ahead and show off your YouTube channels. Also, I'm going to do a quick screen share here.
You guys,
Jay
I think
Campbell.
we have to do this at least once a quarter, once a month. I mean, this is
Yeah.
profound stuff, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
man.
do. We have to do it.
Yeah, man. So Jay Campbell, subscribe. I am subscribed. Now, when you subscribe, make sure the bell is rung so you get all notifications. And then Matthew, hit that bell, all notifications, Matthew LaCroix, and then Forbidden Knowledge News, subscribe, all notifications, Billy Carson, Forbidden Knowledge. You've all got your own websites too. So do me a favor and give me the links so I can put it in the video description box for all your websites and links to get a hold of you. And now how do I turn this thing off? Stop. I don't want you on anymore. Stop share. There it is.
Zoom keeps
right.
changing everything. It's hilarious.
Beautiful opportunities, ladies and gentlemen. Be excellent to each other. Be the change you want to see.